the ocean for 2 days, and you're just like, oh my gosh, can't we update the oceans? And the next morning you wake up in an island, so all going to the island, come back for a nice meal. It's just so nice.
I'll give the status of that one because I've talked to the Alberta Environment and they say you're not allowed to go in and do any work in there, but we can observe and we surveyed it and it's not getting worse. Yeah, so what's happening is all it is the failure was topping over here and it was low and frozen. And now it's just going to erode that. So it keeps the water from flowing in spring. It'll keep eroding that. So it'll be, yeah, so that's all. Yeah, it'll, and it takes 3 to 6 months. It'll take the summer. So it takes that long. But Alberta Environment decided, yeah, this is a failure. You're observing it, you're monitoring it, but we're not going in there. And they said, yes, you're not allowed to go in.
So my 1:30 start's not going to happen?
Because it is, this is the fish very.
All right, let's get to going on the meeting, everybody. Okay, we'll call us to order and get going. We'll start with a roll call, Mr. Westerson.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Palladino.
I'm present.
Councillor Parker is walking. Thank you. Councillor Croson.
I'm here.
Councillor Middleton Hope is absent, and I see Councillor Carlson has joined us online. Thank you.
All right, but we do have quorum, right?
We do.
Okay, perfect. We'll start then with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future while recognizing their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. We begin with the adoption of the agenda, which has 3 presentations on it today. I have a motion from Acting Mayor Parker. Be it resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting of the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee of May 4th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Acting Mayor Parker.
Is there anything that needs to be added at this time, Mr. Chair? Not Mr. Chair, but Deputy City Clerk.
Yes, thank you. We did receive a late submission, a letter from, and I'm just trying to pull up because I lost the name.
Council of Southern Alberta.
Safety, thank you very much. Regarding presentation 4.1, so we would ask that we would amend the agenda to include that letter, and we can do that and have that publicized publicly after this meeting.
Yeah. Seeing if there's no other additions or deletions, Madam Chair, I just call the question.
Great. So motion on the amended agenda. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Move then to the consent agenda. I have a motion from Councillor Palladino. Be it resolved that the minutes of Civic Works Standing Policy Committee held on April 6, 2023 be approved, and the Chair and City Clerk designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee received as information the status of initiatives 05-04-2023. Councillor Palladino.
Bill, there's anything else to add to that? If that's the case, then I would move, or I'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Passes unanimously again. And we move now to presentations. Our first presentation is on the harmonization of school and playground zones. And we have Mr. Ali from the Transportation Engineering Manager to speak about why this is a good thing. Mr. Ali, the floor is yours, and I see if you'd like to introduce your co-speaker.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present a subject which is very close to my heart. I'm a traffic engineer because I'm very passionate about it, and I really like when I have opportunity to present something which will, improve, enhance road safety in city of Lethbridge. So I have with me Caitlin Barr. She supported our project from the beginning in public engagement, and she's going to talk about public engagement part. We also have Alison Purcell from School Board and Sergeant Daniel Lomness from Lethbridge Police. Oh, we have a presentation there. Oh, there? Okay. So, next slide, please. So this presentation is regarding the harmonization of school and playground zone. This comes from our road safety plan that was approved in June of 2021. The primary objectives of the transportation safety plan was to identify measures to move towards a goal we call is Vision Zero, or vision of zero deaths and serious injuries in our transportation system. So we targeted 2040 as that target year, and every year we want to take actions to go towards that goal of zero deaths and serious injuries related to transportation. So this plan also identifies policies and projects to make transportation safety a top priority for City of Lethbridge. Transportation safety strategies were developed and recommended using a safe system framework. So this is a newer ideology which has come in providing road safety, and that targets safe roads, safe road users, safe speeds, and safe vehicles. So all the 4 elements involved in collisions are targeted for improvement in road safety. So harmonization of school and playground zone was one of important recommended strategies. So we have several focus areas in the plan, and one of the focus areas is to work for improvement of road safety for children, for example, and other vulnerable road users. And this strategy which we are presenting today is one of the strategies towards that focus area. So next slide, please. So we have school and playground zones in City of Lethbridge governed by the traffic bylaw because the provincial statute allows cities to set their school zones and playground zones. So the current playground zones in Lethbridge are in effect from 8:30 a.m. to 1 hour after sunset and are in effect around the year. So as we all know, in summer, playgrounds are used much earlier than 8:30 a.m. And 1 hour after sunset is something like really confusing for a lot of people. We don't really follow when the sunset happens, and 1 hour is kind of very vague term. And that's what it is for now. And school zones in Lethbridge are in effect from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. school days. Sometimes drivers are not sure which days are school days. And sometimes, public school as well as the Catholic board, they have holidays on different days, and that also causes some confusion. We also know that regularly outside the school hours, the playground equipment and the playground area and other facilities in the school are used for different purposes, such as extracurricular activities and so on. And our current practice is inconsistent with many municipalities. So again, from our survey, we found that lots of people know about these harmonized playground zones. City of Calgary started it several years ago, followed by Edmonton, Medicine Hat, and all other major municipalities. Town of Coaldale did it just last year. Next slide, please. So we have 28 school zones and 41 playground zones. So all these zones will change if this initiative is approved. So we also plan to undertake a comprehensive review of the existing signage and upgrade them based on the current guidelines from Transportation Association of Canada as well as Alberta provincial guidelines. So they are there, they are grandfathered. Many of the signs don't comply with the current regulations. So we will do a comprehensive review and redesign the signs and locations and revamp the whole system to be in compliance with the current regulations. So I'm also showing one slide, little bit, not directly related, but related to speeds. So this is a commonly cited picture when we talk about speeding and its impact or effect on road safety. So as you see on that graphic, I don't know if it is, 5%. So at 20 miles per hour, that is approximately 32 kilometer per hour, the chance of survival is 95%, or the probability of dying is only 5%. When you go higher speeds, like at 65 kilometer, at 40 miles per hour, that becomes 85-15. So it's a big difference. The speed is a very major contributing factor, especially in the collisions involving fatalities or serious injuries. So next slide, please. So we have, done some peer research. We've spoken with people in other municipalities and literature search and so on. So there are lots of benefits as we see. by doing harmonizing or by combining the school and playground zones with the new regulation. So some of the benefits are like fixed end time is easier for motorists to remember. So as I said, 1 hour after sunset means like little bit vague. Longer speed reductions in playground zones, so longer times would increase safety by reducing the severity of collisions by that time. And a consistent provincial start and end time of playground zones or school zones will make it easier for motorists to remember, to reduce the speed and also reduces confusion. So we also got letters of support from major stakeholders in road safety in Lethbridge. That includes both the school boards, Lethbridge Police Service, the trauma services in Lethbridge Regional Hospital. I don't know if that letter has gone to you guys or not. And then also the Southern Alberta Road Safety Society, also made up of several organizations in and around Lethbridge. Next slide, please. I won't go into detail in this. So there is one study which was conducted for City of Calgary, and we don't have resources to do our own study. So obviously we depend on their results. So it says that the evaluation resulted in really positive results. So the speed reduced from 36 to 30, and then injuries reduced and collisions also reduced. And there were also some public opinion survey, and it seems more than 80% people responded that this new system was easier for them to remember and be consistent. Next slide, please. So if this initiative is approved, we will amend the traffic bylaw immediately as soon as this is approved by City Council. Then we'll start the process of implementation by fabricating signs June through August. And we have an implementation plan. Caitlin will go over that plan. And then we are hoping that all the signs will be replaced by the third quarter of 2023. And then we will have some kind of education and drive as well when we begin enforcing these new rules. The cost of the project is $65,000, and we are not asking for any monies separately for this. We had another capital project in the last capital program where we saved some money that was also for science, and we are hoping that we will use that money for this project. Next slide, and Caitlin will go over them.
So public or broad community engagement for this initiative kicked off at the January 18th community conversation event. There were about 100 conversations that were had in person, and the majority of stakeholders were in support of the initiative. Additional engagement with school divisions beyond what is cited in the slide occurred at the most recent joint city school board meeting on April 28th. Next slide. An online engagement survey was made available to the public for 1 month. The survey provided the community with the opportunity to answer questions about the current state of playground and school zones and the potential impacts of transitioning to a harmonized system. There were 8 yes or no questions and 2 open-ended questions. You can find the verbatim responses of everyone in your package in the What We Heard report. We did see common themes come from the open-ended questions. So for those that were in support of harmonization, they cited their reasons as improved safety for children and consistency and clarity of effective times. Those with mixed reactions, they cited more so that they acknowledged the improved safety, but they cited concerns with slower traffic time or slower moving traffic, and they suggested different effective times for the zones. And then those who felt negatively about the initiative, they centered their criticism around slower moving traffic, skepticism at improved safety for children, and the perception of increased opportunities for enforcement bodies to issue tickets. Next slide. Thanks. So administration has created a high-level draft implementation plan to show how the city would guide the community through the transition to a harmonized system should council approve the request. The approach to this implementation plan relies heavily on a strong communication and education campaign. It also rests on the foundation of answering the question early and often of what's in it for me. As the city leads the community through this transition, it will need to rely on community partners to share the messaging. Those community partners could include the media, school districts, Lethbridge Police Service, and after-school care programs. Understanding that some stakeholders will remain unsatisfied, clear communication about timelines and the new expectations will allow for most stakeholders to understand the purpose of the change and accept it going forward.
So here is the recommendation. So we request Civic Works SPC to recommend to City Council to approve school and playground zone harmonization, consisting of changing the existing school zones to playground zones, change the effective times of all the playground zones, those existing and the new ones, from 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, and yeah, both be effective from the third quarter of this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll open it now to any of the public who would want to speak on this. So Ms. Purcell, is there anything you wish to say, or is your letter sufficient, or you can certainly have the floor if there's something you'd like to add from the school district.
I certainly came today just to provide support, and I can certainly add a couple of things in addition to what's already been said. The school division obviously supports this. This is a great initiative program to move forward with. When we look at our school zones, we often see that our school grounds are used in the evening, and the fields are full of kids playing soccer, families out there playing. Our playgrounds are being used, which we want to see in our community. We want to see that active living in the evenings, and I think that our current school zones don't necessarily support that safety aspect there when they're walking to and from the fields that they're accessing. So that would be my additional comments that weren't necessarily brought up, but we fully support that, and I definitely play a large part in the traffic safety aspect of our community, and I also sit on the letter of support that just came from the Southwestern Alberta Traffic Safety Society, and there was definitely mass support around the table, and that's from communities all surrounding, as well as community of Coaldale, who just recently changed their systems as well. So definitely the support from the school division to go to the harmonized playgrounds. That was a great option for our city. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Anything you'd like to add from the LPS that hasn't already been said, or are you good? Okay, perfect. And everybody else is city staff, so you're all here for other parts. So we can move to questions. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay. Just to talk about the naysayers, of course, the conspiracy theories, we're doing this for increased ticketing, right? We can make a lot of money off this. They don't think it's for safety. What have you heard from the other communities? Has it, how are they dealing with that? What have they done with their engagement plan to deal with the naysayers?
I think, this has been accepted across the province, and haven't heard much negative, things on this. And typically when this kind of road safety initiatives are taken, public input is not necessarily, primary or critical in making those decisions. It's science of road safety, which is primary. And people sometimes change, as I think I read the letter from the trauma center surgeons. Both of them mentioned that I can actually, that reads so well, I think I better read it here. He says, opposition to change is expected, speed bump, even when community members are presented with benefits of speed reduction. So we expect some people may not like this idea, but overall the benefits to the society is much larger, and I did some calculations. So if we change this speed limit from, say, in normal times from 50 to 30, the generally our the length people will drive around these zones is about 100 meters. So I calculated the difference in time between 7.2 to 12 seconds, so less than 5 seconds. So does it really make a big difference to people? And it's established fact, like you don't have to even discuss that speeds is a major, contributor in the result of or the outcome of the collision. I mean, collision happen, property damage happen, but the outcome which we don't want is serious injuries and deaths, because that devastates families. Like we have seen families and families being impacted by, collisions involving serious injuries or death. Like serious injury will make one family suffer for, a long duration. So that's very, very important. From my knowledge, I mean, we haven't heard much opposition to this, school, especially school and playground zones, because, everyone has families, children, and they're all concerned about it. There would be obviously, I mean, none of the initiatives we take will be, accepted by everyone. So
No,
haven't
that's absolutely
heard
true.
much.
I just think we should spend more time on this than bees. Oh, sorry. Anybody who was here at the council meeting the other day would understand that one. The other thing is, and this is a joke, can we change it to 9:15? Because then it lines up with the curfew we haven't used since 1947. Right? We still have a curfew for 14 and under, so why not use it and not line the two up? I'm kidding. That's my only questions. And so you have a comment, Councillor Palladino?
I did have a comment, and I had a question too, but I was going to ask the next presenter this question. But the more I hear you speak about the Safety Act and the safety plan and the traffic bylaw, makes me think that I should ask you this question about e-bikes and scooters, and because I do a lot of walking on the green strips, and they come up behind you pretty quickly, and they're quiet and they're fast. And I'm just wondering if there's, at some point, we're going to have to take a closer look at regulating where they're used and, maybe helmets and licenses. I don't know, but I'm afraid there's going to be a collision at some point because, like I said, they're really quiet and they sneak up to you fast. So maybe when you do your traffic bylaw or your transportation safety plan, it's something to take a closer look. I don't know if I'm just complaining maybe because I'm a crabby old man or what, but that's my beef right now. So
Yeah, that's a pilot project, the one we have right now, and we have some inbuilt systems which are made, are created to reduce those potential of collisions. So the speed is controlled by the system. So we are still evaluating this. This is the second year of implementation, and we definitely look at the, data and information. We probably might come back to Civic Works Committee with a report on how it went, that pilot project, for extending it into next year. So safety will be one of the criteria to be evaluated.
because I think they're a motorized vehicle as far as I'm concerned. Some of these bikes can go pretty fast, like 45 kilometers an hour. And, they're not licensed other than the license we gave to the scooter guys. But I'm thinking more of the private electric bikes.
Yeah.
So
private, we don't have controls. You're right, yeah.
We don't have legal here right now. The amendments to the traffic bylaw, knowing that, council takes August off, are you on target to get those done before you want to make the changes at the end in September?
Yeah.
Okay, so those.
We have a plan, yeah.
Okay, because I just can imagine that'll be a question from some of the members of the council who aren't here right now, just to make sure that there's not going to be anything slowing it down if we pass this. The other thing, and it is a comment, kudos on the implementation plan. It's one of the best draft implementation plans I think we've had presented to us about understanding the psyche of the public and trying to make sure that you'll have their questions answered as best you possibly can. So I just had to mention that somebody in your group, I don't know if it's you, Ms. Barr, certainly understands drivers and how to get information across to them. So I'm really impressed with the implementation plan. But having no other questions, we will move to the motion. So you guys can have a seat in the audience again. And the motion is from Acting Mayor Parker. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends Council approve the implementation of harmonized school and playground zones as follows. 1, change existing school zones to playground zones. And 2, change the effective time of playground zones to 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. And with both the above changes to be effective in Q3 of 2023. Acting Mayor Parker.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you, Ahmad, for your presentation. Both of you,
your presentation, as well as thank you for making a presentation to the Joint School Board Committee meeting last week. I have the privilege of sitting on that with Councillor Schmidt-Rempel and Ms. Purcell, and it was unanimous support around that table at that time as well, including both our superintendents, Mr. Sampson and Ms. Gilmore. So I think it's a really good idea. I think it creates not synergy, but it creates less confusion in the community, because quite often people think, what's a playground zone, what's a school zone? And even when school's out, there's things like blasts going on in these schools, and there's kids out there. So I think it's not going to take long for the community to adopt it. And I was actually quite surprised that half the community were not on full support, but I think after they see it rolled out, they'll come around and they'll understand the importance of it. And so I'd ask for this community support.
All right. Motion's been made. All in favor? Passes unanimously. And that will be going forward to council as a recommended motion. Thank you very much for your presentations. We move now, continuing with transportation, we move to the annual report from transportation. Mr. Darwin Jewell, GM Transportation, on annual report of transportation services. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, members of Civic Works Committee. This slide here, I wanted to, first of all, I think it'll be about a 7 to 10 minute presentation, if this is okay. And I wanted to focus, this is our mission statement from our business plan, and I also wanted to talk about the first 2 priorities within this mission statement. The first, when Mr. Ali was up here, we're talking about roadside safety. So to improve traffic safety for all, reduce collisions with serious injuries, right in our mission statement. The second thing is mentioning that transportation is now becoming truly multimodal, scooters, bikes, walking. And secondary is people will still drive, and we're also encouraging transit as well through a number of methods that I can talk about here. Next slide, please. Oh, might be out of order, but I will, oh, there we are. Thank you very much. So this is really our organizational structure, which is in 3 main buckets. And I'm not going to say they're siloed because we're always working together, but it's 3 main buckets. Ahmed, Mr. Ali's area is the engineering planning area. Mr. Brumman is in the roads infrastructure area, the manager of that bucket of work. And Julian Ruck is in the transportation operations manager. So some of them, I think Ahmed is here today. The other 2 couldn't make it, but, oh, there she is. Hi, she showed up late. Thank you very much. And please ask her any questions on snow removal and help me out. So now the 3 managers, myself, we represent 50 full-time employees in transportation mixed within those 3 areas, and another about 25 part-time employees, which are seasonal, sometimes busy in the winter or busy in the summer, but it allows us to ebb and flow with the peaks. Next slide, please. I'm going to focus on this slide because it is not part of your package for the annual report, and this was a more of a curiosity research for me. Over the last 20 years, I tracked our population, which is one color. It's been stable as all heck, 2% plus or minus 0.5% for the last 20 years. So one peak in 2007. However, the reason I plotted our road system growth and our sidewalk system growth is we really follow the population growth, which kind of makes sense. When more people move into the city, we have to build houses, we have to build roads, but it really matches about a year or 2 behind our infrastructure. But really what I wanted to focus on here is how incredibly stable Lethbridge is. We've never in the last 20 years had a negative population increase, and of course our roads are not ever shrinking, but they've always been growing at a nominal rate. This actually makes it easier for us to plan our system because then we know we have a predictable transportation growth. Next slide, please. This is now our operating budgets. So transportation, transportation as a department is really three different areas: transportation, parking, and community lighting for 17.3 million. 14 million is transportation and parking. Community lighting is about 3.2 million. The capital improvement budget, the $8.5 million, that's probably one of our lowest capital improvement budgets in the last few years. With the pandemic, we didn't do a lot of new roads, a lot of new off-site projects we're not developing. It's basically $8.5 up to $20 million, depending on growth, right? So that's the range of what we're at. The other thing I was going to comment on here is in the operating budget, we have snow and ice, community lighting, and road maintenance is over 50% of our budget. And those two big chunks of work, road maintenance and snow and ice control, are in Ms. Ruck's area. Community lighting is really just a bucket to pay for power for the community lighting, street lighting. Next slide, please. So now for the fun stuff, the projects. And we have a lot of projects I would like to talk about. We don't have enough time today to talk about them, so not in 10 minutes. So I'm going to talk about two projects that I'm particularly proud of. The first one is the graph above, which is the Highway 3 bridge over Scenic Drive. And I am particularly proud of that one because not only was it about a $3 million project, but we negotiated with the province. The province kicked in $1.5 million, not from a grant, from their own pockets, their own funding source, to help us with that bridge. So the city only had to pay $1.5 million, which happened to come from a grant as well. So it also completes a pathway from North Lethbridge, downtown, South Lethbridge, and around, and it allows someone in a cycle or a scooter, or if they want to walk or jog, 18-kilometer loop without, all on a 3-meter pathway, without getting off their bike. Maybe at intersections, but at least now you have a good 3-meter pathway to cross. The second project, and I know this is one of Councillor Croson's favorite projects too, is the 3rd Avenue, and I'm going to call it the 3rd Avenue rejuvenation, because we finished that project, did that project during the pandemic, and it was about $10 million plus Festival Square, almost $1 million for Festival Square, and it really rejuvenated 3rd Avenue as a destination, and 3rd Avenue construction was 4th Street to 8th Street. So a very good project, and I'll talk later on about future projects, 3rd Avenue beautification. I hope the same success comes with that project as well. Next slide, please. And now a couple of big scooter projects there. Councillor Palladino's asked a question about scooters, bikes, and e-bikes. And by the way, I bought an electric car, same thing. They're darn quiet. You can sneak up to somebody on an electric car just like an electric bike. But a couple of comments on the importance of the Transportation Master Plan and what Mr. Ali was talking about, the Transportation Safety Plan. We just heard one of the initiatives from the Transportation Safety Plan, and I hope Council approves that one because that's a real positive safety initiative. And thank you very much for approving that position that he's hiring now that help us encourage added traffic safety. But we have to plan before we implement. So the scooter project is a trial, and these plans tell the public and council where our focus will be and allows us to prioritize projects for capital funding. The Neuron scooters are a trial, and I think so far a successful trial. It's a trial for another year. And the 3rd Avenue South beautification, and this is the beautification planning project between Scenic Drive and Mayor McGrath Drive. We're just doing the planning study for that now, and my vision would be very similar to what the 3rd Avenue South construction would be like. Maybe not the same design, but same effect to rejuvenate that very old 3rd Avenue highway, which was a highway at one point. And that planning study will help drive the future CIPs. We have placeholders in the current CIP for 2027 and 2030, I believe, which are right now placeholders. this planning study will help drive the next CIP for what we want to do for construction there. Next slide, please. With this one here, if you remember, KPMG made a recommendation on snow and ice control. Do less snow removal and more snow plowing. So we created a plan and we presented that to City Council with, this is what we want to do as a trial, phase 1, phase 2, and then come back to City Council. Change is hard for the public, so we've completed phase 1, which was 25 kilometers plowing to the right in residential areas. Ms. Ruck can answer any questions you have on successes of phase 1. Phase 2 would be 80 to 100 kilometers, and we'll trial that out for the next 2 years, and then we'll come back to council spring of 25. So I believe the implementation was successful, but Ms. Ruck can talk about that if you have any questions. Next slide, please. Some other key milestones, and I'm not going to talk about each one of these. You can ask if you have any particular questions. I'm just going to talk about one item here, parking, the second bullet, and because I was quite proud of some of the successes we've had in the last 6 months with parking. We've had significant parking changes, nothing to do with the bylaw, that's still on, we're still working with downtown, but parking changes in enforcement and parking lots. For example, NMAX Soccer Center, the Transportation Parking Group is managing those off-street parking lots. Just like we're not managing the enforcement on University of Lethbridge or the college, but we're part of that same process. The Transportation Department or the Parking Department took over parking enforcement from Mr. Henley's group in Community Services. It was about fall, I think, of last year, but we fully took it over in the new year with parking enforcement officers, and I believe it's been doing exceptionally well, and we're getting out there more enforcement, and we're communicating more than we ever have before with the customers that are using that parking. And so that's fall of 22, and the third, definitely last but not least, is the Park and Ride. And if you remember, December, Transportation took over that building and we hired extra enforcement. I was in there earlier today and we're renovating it. We're doing safety improvements in there, security improvements, I should say. It's a good place to be at now. I invite anyone to go there. I will even provide you a bus pass if you want to take a free transit ride, because that's the hub of where the transit's always going. But it's a real success now, and I hope it stays that way for a long period of time. Next slide, please. All I have to say with this is 4,000 requests per year is a lot, and that's about 10 or 11 a day. And so it's a lot of requests. A lot of those are in snow and ice control in Ms. Ruck's area. Fortunately, it was a good year. We can get a lot more requests than that, and it also in the pothole patching. So I'll comment, a mild winter kept those requests down, and we serve the public as best we can. We also had cold snap, so this year we'll have a lot of pothole requests, and we are receiving them, and we're reacting to those. That's not the 2022, that's the 2023 numbers. I also wanted to mention the parking, 2 requests in parking. That sounds odd. Remember, we only took over parking enforcement. Most of the complaints come in enforcement. So Mr. Henley's group handled those enforcements last year. I'm sure that number will go up significantly in parking because of parking enforcement issues. Next slide, please. So this slide just represents the variability of the Transportation Department. We're definitely seasonal. So in the winter, we go from snow and ice control one day to patching in another day when the Chinook blows in. Spring, we go from running sweepers on the ground, and when it rains, then we have to stop that. But we also are doing pothole repairs in the spring. And that's middle of April till the middle of May is our pothole high season. And in the summer and the fall, the old joke used to be there's 2 seasons, construction and winter. Well, in the summer, we do road construction, sidewalk repairs, bridge repairs. We try to do as much minimal traffic disruptions as possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but we do temporary traffic control. Some of the year-round operations that are always going to be the same for us is traffic and rail signals, and yes, we do have rail, the 9 kilometers, 8 kilometers of rail spur lines. So that we have a traffic signal group that manages our rail signals and 153 traffic signals and 45, or I can't remember how many PED signals. So that keeps that group busy year-round, 365 days a year. And it is. They're all on call 365 days a year. Traffic operations has traffic control, which is 365 days a year. They have to do traffic control for accidents, for special events, for permits, for even police call them in every once in a while. They have summer operations as well, which is line painting and sign installations. And the planning and design happens usually in the winter for construction in the summer. And the last is the parking is continuous throughout the year. We're always dealing with parking continuously. And that's parking enforcement and parking engineering and also RPP zones, residential parking permits and things like that. Thank you very much. This is a complex slide, and all I wanted to show you is there's a historic 10-year, we've tracked our road conditions for the last 20 years. So this is our 10-year in the upper left is 10-year historic road conditions tracked to what a council-approved standard is. 65 arterial, 55 is our bus routes and our collector roads, and 50% is our local roads. And the last CIP, I don't know if you remember, I came to the CIP group and said, we do have a problem in our local road conditions declining. And so the prediction model, and I'll go to the right-hand side, the 10-year forecast said, we will have a problem if we don't increase our funding for local roads in about 3 to 4 years. So there, and council actually accepted, we'll add $1 million to the CIP budget to fix that problem. And we're working on that. So right now, arterial roads are right where they should be. Collector roads, those bus routes are right where they should be, with or without the potholes. And the local roads are right now better than they could be, better than they need to be right now. But in the next few years, they're continuing to decline, and we're funding those appropriately. So we're not trying to spend too much money. So the point is, this one here, this is value for money. So we're not spending too much, we're not spending too little, and that's what we're trying to show. We do the same thing with our bridge inventory, with our sidewalk inventory, with all of our other assets. Next slide, please. And speaking of assets, this is the Mike Myers joke, is the $1 billion question. All we need is a third river crossing, and we will have a $1 billion asset built into that. But $750 million, it's not chump change for the value of this infrastructure. So we take our condition quite seriously, and we fund it because we know we're going to have to fund this in perpetuity. So 700 kilometers of road, 700 plus kilometers of sidewalk. The spur lines, it's mandated by Alberta Transportation. We have to maintain to a certain condition these spur lines. The 153 traffic signals. Some people would say there's too many, some people that say there's not enough. And then the biggest value part is the bridges. So one Whoop-Up Drive bridge is about $16 million. So the new river crossing would be that much more with the $150, $200 million total construction cost. But this represents one of the biggest investment of infrastructure in the city is the transportation assets here. Next slide, please. And the last slide, second last slide, is I just wanted to flag a couple of projects that you may or may not be aware of, just in case you get asked, because we are in the middle of design for, I'll talk about this, the Scenic Drive to the Whoop-Up Drive off-ramp in the bottom right. That project, it's Every day it's congested by about 4 or 5 intersections for about half an hour, and it's a real bottleneck for a short period of time. But it's also a safety issue. So we're spending some money to fix that road, not just the off-ramp, but it's all of Scenic Drive. I think it's going to go 3-lane each way, thinking about the long term, and it's going to have 2 off-ramps, pictured just like University Drive and Whoop Up, exactly the same concept, because you're going to go down to 2 off-ramp lanes, and we still want to do the design safely. So we're designing it this year, and it's approved as a construction project for 2024. The other project I wanted to flag is the Highway 3 pathway. I was here a couple of months ago talking about new active transportation funding, where we got this extra grant from the province, from the federal government, on active transportation. So we applied for 2 or 3 different projects. Highway 3 pathway was one of them. So of the $3 million we got, $1.8 million is allocated for this one Highway 3 project, which goes from Mammograth Drive right into the WT Hill subdivision. But in addition to that, we also have a Transport Canada grant, which the city didn't apply for, Canadian Pacific Rail Line applied for, and Transport Canada was the grant funder. So we got another $1.5 million just for that rail crossing, which is an existing rail crossing at Highway 3 in the Montana. But we also, the city paid for it because now we're going to have a pedestrian crossing right beside it. So as a pedestrian, you can go from Mammograth Drive, 3-meter pathway, right into the WT Hill to tie you into the sidewalk on WT Hill Boulevard. So maximum use of grants in both the rail crossings and in the pathway. So those 2, there's also the third, I'm going to mention the 4th Avenue, 7th Street, which is a bike lane we're putting in on 4th Street, 4th Avenue, and 7th Street from the existing bike lane on 7th Avenue right to the Galt Gardens. So basically now you can bike, cycle, or scooter from that pathway, which is highly utilized on 7th Avenue, up 7th Street, and you can go downtown east-west as well. So those 3 projects, sorry I added a third, are projects I just wanted to flag to your attention. So now I just wanted to give you a couple minutes, ask any questions of me, Mr. Ali, or Ms. Ruck.
Thank you very much. Again, just to make sure we're on target, any members of the public have anything to add? Ms. Purcell, you're the only member of the public, so no, you're good? Not that we're picking on you. We'll move on to questions then. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Palladino?
One question. You refer to those, the roads as assets. To me, they're a liability because you have to maintain them. So why do you call them assets?
Basically, anything with a value is an asset, right? So it is a liability because we have to maintain those assets in perpetuity. Of the road growth, our typical road growth is almost the same as if you have a 2% population increase. We know our roads will grow a little bit less. Usually it's about 1.5. The percentage, 1.5% over 700 kilometers, is a lot of new roads. Most of those assets are what I call contributed assets. Contributed assets are assets that are contributed by a developer for free. So developers are paying for most of the roads, the collector and the local roads. So the city's concern is these contributed assets are built as good a quality, so we're not going to spend extra dollars, extra taxpayer dollars maintaining those. In the capital improvement plan is the other way that we build new roads, University Drive or the Scenic Drive and Whoop Up Drive capital projects. That's the only 2 ways we increase our road network. And yes, they're an asset and a liability, just like a bridge is an asset and a liability, and we have to make sure it doesn't fail.
It's like a car, I guess.
Yeah.
It's an asset at some point, but at some point they become liabilities.
Yeah, that's exactly. And it constantly depreciates.
Great, thanks.
I don't think we can sell off our roads to make money. No. Talking about signage, when you're doing these pathways and you have all these things, have we looked at signage? Like when I go to Coaldale, they have amazing signage on their main street about how far it is to walk to a place. And they have, all, like you see other communities. Have we had any conversation about doing more for signage for pedestrians, for tourists? Is that something your department is looking into?
Yeah, so you're talking about wayfinding signage.
Yes.
I think downtown has some wayfinding signage, but as far as the cycling and pedestrian is concerned, probably we need to look at them as well, especially now that we have more cycling network coming up. So we will definitely look about doing some wayfinding signage for cyclists and pedestrians.
Yeah, because I know the Heart of Our City has talked about it as well.
Yeah.
And it's something I think that there is a need for. Now, the pathway to WT Hill, is that the one that's connecting to the Coaldale pathway?
Yes, and also, I'm going to complete the wayfinding, because the Parks Master Plan, most of the parks trails are a different asset under Parks Authority. We have about 65 kilometers of pathways along roadways, but we try to work together and go, where does the public need signage, wayfinding signage? And so they've got an initiative on where they're doing their wayfinding signage for pedestrians, cyclists, and stuff like that. But we have to put it together and put it more holistically to Coaldale, to, when you're traveling around outside of the region as well. So that's what Ahmed was talking about relative to, we can always improve that. Your original question around the link project, I've been in communication with the link pathway projects. They're a little bit slower than they would like to have been. We're just figuring out, do they come in on 4th Avenue at 43rd Street or 6th Avenue and 43rd Street? It doesn't matter to us where they come in from. I think it's going to be at 4th Avenue and 43rd Street at the current set of lights. And that's where WT Hill has the current sidewalk right up. So that's where we want to finish this pathway project from Mermagrath Drive. Part of it is on Highway 3, part of it is in the neighborhood across the rail line, and then go through the WT Hill subdivision to WT Hill Boulevard, so a pedestrian or a cyclist can give up. Everything is accessible. So then when the link pathway gets their funding together, all we have to do is a traffic signal upgrade or a pedestrian upgrade at that existing intersection. So the city's committed to building it right to city limits, and then the link pathway, people are going to connect to it wherever they go from there. I think they're figuring out their alignment. Their alignment might be finished now. Now they just have to figure out their funding.
We have as many kilometers of sidewalks as we do of roads, which is fascinating when you think about it. When it comes to the roads, we clean them. When it comes to the sidewalk, the public are supposed to clean them. I get more complaints about public not cleaning the sidewalk than I get almost about snow plowing. And I know that is, regulation, regulatory, et cetera. Have you heard anything in other communities about how to get better responses from the public on actually cleaning their sidewalks? No?
I'll try to answer that. I believe, Julianne will correct me if I'm wrong, when we do our street cleaning, when we do a PSA, we encourage the residents to at least sweep the debris off their sidewalk onto the road, so when we're on the road, we can pick it up. It only goes so far, because you still have to communicate with 35,000 property owners. So it's hit and miss. The same thing with our pathways. I think rarely are we sweeping those 3-meter pathways. Sometimes we're putting a broom on and sweeping them to the road or to the outside, and then the 3-meter pathway. So if you're a rollerblader, people hate rocks. And so that's what we're trying to do with these pathways along roads, is keep those as clean as possible. And the only real method, we will never put a sweeper on the pathway because it's too heavy, but you can have a broom and roll a broom, and then you just push that material off into the grass area or into the road if it's adjacent to it. So we're trying to improve the pathway system a little bit with cleanliness as best we can, but I don't know of any other best practice of how they clean sidewalks other than communicating to the public to sweep them into the roadways. And I'm part of this national benchmarking exercise, and we've had chats about some cities actually clean, some cities actually do snow removal on their own sidewalks, and they pay through the tax rate, and it's a huge tax rate for that. But we're doing everything that is common, so we're allocating the public to maintain that sidewalk for snow removal and cleaning, and just encouraging them to sweep it into the street.
Okay, Mr. Sanchez, you must have answered it the way you wanted, because you popped in and then popped out again.
Yes, that's correct. Darwin, I think he covered most of the points. I was just going to mention again, back to communications. That's probably the work. I know Darwin's team has a person that has been working with corporate communications on getting the message to the residents, and there are programs like the Snow Angel program too that I know we actually communicate that and tweet that in social media or Facebook just to encourage residents. But like Darwin said, that's what I just removed myself. We're following best practices, what others are doing, and Darwin has been doing this benchmark for quite a few years and is trying to get all the details about it.
With the freeze-thaw cycle this last winter, not only the sidewalks, but the alleys between the sidewalks, right? Those are always the things that I get all the complaints about. Who's responsible for those?
Responsibility in what aspect?
Well, for snow removal in that part, that one little part between the alley, between sidewalks. So, right, you own your, you have your sidewalk, you have your sidewalk. I get all the complaints about alleys.
I would love to say that it's between adjacent property owners, which is not true. A park, whether it's a 10-meter strip or a 25-meter or 100-meter area, it's the city's responsibility. And I know Parks has that as a level 4 priority. That's the lowest priority for them. So when they get all the other work done, and probably when they get requests on complaints on these small strips, basically you're talking about a strip of city land between a park and 2 residences are on either side.
Yeah.
That is because the sidewalk bylaw says it's the adjacent landowner. So a private property owner is the adjacent landowner, or a park, the Parks Department is the adjacent landowner there. So that puts the responsibility on them.
You have to know the last question. I've been asking of everybody. Anything keeping you up at night in your department? Or any concerns that we should know about that you're like, oh, if you guys only knew?
No, right now, potholes, and you know about potholes, and we know about potholes. And I think, if anything, the changing weather events keep me up at night, and I don't lose sleep over it. But I worry about the changing weather events. Snow and ice control. Our seasons are changing. We had a relatively good winter last year, and we still did 2 rounds of snow removal, but we had an incredible freeze-thaw and incredibly cold, I think it was December, and that started to damage the roads. And then when the freeze-thaw happens, that's the reason we have so many potholes. So it's really reacting to the changing weather events. We've done that for 25, 50, 100 years. It's always a little bit different. So, I don't think we're going back to the 2009, 2011 major snow removal issues that we had before, but it's just reacting properly to the current conditions of the environment. And
Having the right tools and the right people when you need them.
Exactly.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions, so we will move then to our motion, which is from Councillor Palladino. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends the Council receive for information the 2022 Transportation Annual Report. Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this annual report will provide Council with a good summary of the accomplishments your department has made. So if there aren't any further comments, I will call the question.
Acting Mayor Parker would like to debate, or?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Jewell, thank you, Ms. Ruck, thank you, Mr. Ahmad, and the other person that's missing is Richard. You guys do an amazing job, and I know the potholes is frustrating right now, but I think the community also understands that you guys are trying your best, and I think good weather helps too. I think people are in good moods when it's nice out too, so thank you for everything you do, and thank you for your report.
And it's supposed to be hot and dry this summer, so hopefully that's good for transportation? Okay, perfect. Except for fires, that's a different department. All right. Question's been called. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Jewell, and to your department. And we move now to water, wastewater, and stormwater. So, Mr. Kaup, General Manager, wastewater, stormwater. Now, stormwater, not stormtroopers, even though it's Star Wars Day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I had to put that in somewhere, May 4th.
That was a good one.
The floor is yours.
Yeah. So I'll take the same 7 minutes that Darwin did.
That's what these SPCs are for, is full of
Times
discussion, so that's fine.
So the presentation is you know a brief highlight of the full report. There's a lot of additional information, and this is the first annual report that the Water, Wastewater, Stormwater departments has provided for council. So if we've missed anything, we know lots, and we can't put it all in one report. It'll get better every year. First slide. So just quickly, the organization looks pretty straightforward. The general manager reports to the director of infrastructure services, where there's a manager at each of the treatment plants. There's an engineering and administration group, many of which report directly to the general manager, and we have water and wastewater operations. All told, this area is approximately 100 FTEs. Next slide. So there's lots of information here. It shows up in a couple pages in the report, but the point of this slide is to give you a sense of the scale of our operation and the amount of assets we have at the front end of the city. There's a water plant, and we also maintain and operate 6 storage reservoirs with pump stations. At the bottom is of the city is the wastewater treatment plant, and attached to that is 25 sanitary lift stations. And in between, we've got 5,000 valves on 600 kilometers of pipe, with nearly 3,000 hydrants and a water meter on just about every property, 38,000 water meters that we look after. There's between sanitary and storm manholes, there's over 12,000 of them sitting right in the middle of Darwin's roads, and on the edge is nearly 7,000 catch basins. So just to give you a sense of the collection of the types of assets that we maintain and look after, and for the most part, when it comes to the 1,800 kilometers of pipe under the ground, it's you know, a big challenge to maintain them, because the conditions aren't always obvious like they might be with assets on the surface. So often when it comes to water mains, we run them to failure. We don't we let them break a couple times so that they get our attention, and rather than digging them up on their birthday or some other strange approach. Next slide. Another indication of the scale of the operation. All told, we're about $47 million altogether, and this is the water and stormwater expenditures are covered from rates, and the stormwater from taxes. Next slide. Just wanted to give you a sense of our competitiveness in the marketplace. This shows our residential rates for water and wastewater combined for the average residential customer. That would have a 15 millimeter water meter and consumes 20 cubic meters of water in a month. So this is that average month, and you can see that the rates can vary greatly, and that the city of Lethbridge is at the lowest. So the average resident in Lethbridge pays $60 a month, $61.31 in 2023, and then at the remainder, which are all within the province of Alberta, range from $80 to nearly $115 a month. Next slide. We've got lots of stats and information about, where the water goes and what it gets used for and how much it is. The pie chart on the left is gives you an indication of where all of the water went. There is a total of 23,300 million liters was pumped from the treatment plant last year, and you can see that 33% went to residential customers, 35% to commercial and industrial customers, 17% left the city last year to regional partners, the towns and county, hamlets, McCain's, cheese plant in Diamond City. And then the nearly 14% was unmetered non-revenue water, so it's primarily open space irrigation, so for parks. This would also include water used for firefighting and anything else that's didn't go through a meter is unaccounted for. The total of that 23,000, nearly 8,000 million liters went for residential use, and there's I had our communications people put together the obnoxious cliche of how many Olympic swimming pools that adds up to, because it really helps with the understanding of what we're talking about. But there's over 3,500 Olympic swimming pools worth of water was just for residential use. Our liters per capita per day last year was 211. Next slide. I just wanted to give you a sense of how much unused capacity we have at the treatment plant. As a bit of a foreshadow to next month, you'll be seeing a amended capital improvement plan to add capacity to the plant. But here you'll see the blue line is the average day of those years, and the orange line is the peak day of those years. So in 2017 as well as 2021, we nearly reached 90% of our plant capacity on that one biggest day of the year. And so, as you can tell, it does vary. It's not nearly as predictable as the average day. The biggest variable that adds noise to that line is the weather. And so both of those peaks happened during the summers where there was long hot spells without much rain. So I know in particular in 2017, we had more than 100 days without rain and reached some record high temperatures. So that's, people working hard to keep their lawns green, and it just takes more water to do it. Next slide. So this is, it's not that often that we go to the trouble of looking this far back, but this is in 1975, we started keeping records of our water main breaks or at least that's as far back as we can see within the department. And it was during these, the high break years in the late 80s that sparked our program for annual water main renewals. And so we spend between $2 and $3 million a year replacing the pipe that is prone to failure. And as you can see, the long-range trend is downward. And last year was a particularly good year, unmatched actually, as a minimum of only 30 water main breaks last year. That 29 in 1989, there's a footnote in our data that says that they failed to record some, so that one doesn't count. But for City Council, this is an indication that we're going in the right direction. That it would signal that we are spending enough to keep ahead, or at least reduce the inconvenience that breaks have in the community. Next slide. So on to wastewater. This is some metrics from the treatment plant. If the water plant produced 23,000 megaliters, only 14,000 showed up back at the wastewater plant, and there's nearly 13,000 tons of COD. That's just a measure of the loading that's in the wastewater that we're treating, that we're addressing with the treatment process. 7,000 dry tons of biosolids was generated, and ultimately those are disposed on farmland. And nearly 1,800 tons of waste was taken directly to the Waste and Recycle Center. So this would represent screenings and grit. So the very first step in the treatment process, when the wastewater comes down and hits the headworks, is the large debris like rags and as small as cigarette butts are screened out of the wastewater, but there's also grit removal that gets rid of the sand and dirt, and that all added up to 1,800 tons last year. Next slide. So I showed you an indication of where the capacity of the water plant is, and at the wastewater treatment plant, this is a much more challenging story to illustrate, and that's because it's a lot more factors. That at the water plant you have capacity to produce a volume of water, and you have a demand for that volume of water. Whereas at the wastewater plant, there's variables as to the strength of the waste, with industrial loads and the like. And so there's many components to the treatment process and different factors in each. And so this first chart is to indicate the secondary treatment capacity. So this is the bioreactors that are full of the bacteria that address the COD as well as remove the nutrients. And so the measure here we're using is kilograms of biomass. And so when the plant is operating, the higher strength the waste comes in, the more bacteria we need to get the clean product at the end. And so the higher the biomass in the bioreactors is an indication of the amount of pollution that we're addressing with that bacteria. And so you can see in the last 3 years, our maximum days are in excess of 10 or 100,000 kilograms of biomass, and that's just we know from experience that when you get over in that area between 90 and 100,000 that the operators are on edge, and that almost any change can create a problem. Next chart. Another measure is flow, and this is also challenging. I can show that in 2020 and in last year that the maximum day exceeded our design capacity, and the complicating factor, or the root cause of high flows into the wastewater plant is really wet weather. And so it's not a function of customer behavior, but of the amount of water that's unintentionally getting into the system. The next chart, final chart. So this is to illustrate our digester capacity. This one is there's an inverse relationship here, where what I'm showing you is the solids retention time, and so to properly treat the solids in the anaerobic digester takes a number of days, and Alberta Environment says you should have a minimum of 15 days with that bacteria to do the trick. And you can see that our minimum in 2019 with 2 digesters operating was really close to that minimum. And so it's just a measure, an indication of that we're getting close to capacity. The lower set of lines are to illustrate with a single digester. So if one is out of service because we only have 2, then we're unable to meet our demands. Next slide. So on the wastewater collection side of things, it's it's a lot of on the operations, it's really proactive work. So this is call outs for blocked services primarily. We had 1,437 that were what we call billable calls. That's when we're dispatched to private property to clear the line of roots or debris, and there was a charge. 419 were the blockage was on the city side of the property line, and so there were no charges, or turned out that there was minimal work required. And so this is just a breakdown. 45 were emergency responses where we had to dispatch after hours to address a residential blockage. Next slide. Stormwater metrics, we just have the total precipitation last year was 351 millimeters. The biggest rain was on June 14th, 14 millimeters, and the second largest was a thunderstorm in August on the 25th that had like a 1 in 4 year intensity. So all in all, it was not the scariest year for dealing with stormwater. Pretty tame. Next slide. So this is the stats that we get from 311, the total number of service requests that are directed to the water and wastewater group. There's nearly 5,000 calls. The 1,501 of the calls last year were after-hour requests. And so this is the result of the Water and Wastewater Group getting the calls just because it's after 4:30. So it doesn't matter what the call is. The call center calls the water guy on call. So we have somebody standing by around the clock so that we can tackle our problems. But since we are already standing by, we tackle everybody's problems. And so you get these after-hour calls include, roadkill, broken sprinklers in the park, and just about, anything. So it's only because the call is made in after hours that we tackle the issue in the field. Sometimes we have to dispatch other departments. Most of the times we address the problem if we can, which would include cleaning taking roadkill off the roads. 1,000 of those 4,800 were information requests. 301 tagged that as a wastewater call, but it didn't result in a service request. So those are over and above the 4,800. So so for about a sixth of the calls that deal with us are addressed directly by the 311 people. Next slide. So education and outreach, this is primarily delivered by Stephanie Veenan and on my staff, and so these stats include nearly 24,000 website views, with the number one hit going for the water treatment information. We have over 800 views of the videos that we have on the webpage, and then also the number one is the water treatment plant videos. 121 storm drains were painted with yellow fish last summer, and along with that, over 800 door hangers and letters. Next slide. So I'd be remiss to not brag with my final slide that in 2022, September 14th of 2022, the City of Lethbridge was awarded the winner of the best of the West water taste test at our annual Western Canada Water Wastewater Conference in Calgary that September. So I just wanted to pat myself on the back with the final slide before I answer any questions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Kaup. It is okay to, give yourself a brag. We'll expect something from you, Mr. Jewell, next year to compensate for it. All right. Starting questions, Acting Mayor Parker.
Come forward, I guess.
So we've even lost Ms. Purcell, so.
Thank you, Mr.
I can
Kaup.
draw a crowd.
Thank you, Mr. Kaup, for your presentation, and thank you for the years of service you've done in that department. It's greatly appreciated. I find it very interesting, that one slide in regards to 2022 rate comparison, based on everyone using this amount of water, that we are $40 cheaper than like Calgary. And I think this is something we should be really, really proud of. And obviously this is because we have efficiencies, you just do everything really, really good. So over a year, this is the politician in me, when people say, well, my taxes are cheaper in Calgary by $300, well, technically water is $480 cheaper in the city of Lethbridge. So that's why this is more for my colleagues, the cost of living.
Except for the taxes.
And this is something that we should be really proud of, and I don't think a lot of people know that. And I think this may be one of the reasons why we pull this out of the consent agenda when this does go, just to talk about this. I do have a question in regards to, you were talking about the sanitary manholes, storm manholes, and catch basins. I think this is really an interesting stat, but What's the difference? Okay, storm manhole and a catch basin. What's it look like exactly, a storm manhole?
Okay.
I know it's the round one you see in the middle of the street, but that's
Yeah, so the catch basins are on the gutter. They're the grates that collect the water. And the manholes, the difference between the storm manhole and the sanitary manhole is the sewer that it's connected to. On the surface, they're indistinguishable.
Okay.
And so for the most part, we have the vast majority of those lids have just the City of Lethbridge and the coat of arms on them. I changed the standard a couple of years ago, and you'll now occasionally see an Old Man Watershed emblem on a stormwater manhole. That's just the newest one. So
I think I was just confused because of the circle you used there with had like the bricks and all that. And I'm trying to think what that
it's
looks
the
like.
icon.
My last question, thank you for that answer. In regards to water main break history, now obviously we have some cast iron in the community. Is that the proper term?
Yes.
Just like any other community across North America. And we only replace it when we have to break. When there's a break, we fix it with PVC. Am I correct?
That's correct.
What portion would you have a rough estimate? How much is still in the ground in regards to cast iron? Would you know that off the top or a rough estimate?
Yes, I would. We have, it's about 9% of that total. So there's 614 kilometers total, and the last time I checked, I think we were around 58 kilometers of cast iron.
That only gets replaced. Obviously, you're not going to go dig it up. It's based on when things break.
That's right.
That's when the time to do it, which is the most feasible. Perfect.
Yeah, and that's really just best value for money. The vintage of the cast iron that fails can be quite surprising. We have pipes in downtown that were installed in 1909 and have yet to fail, and so it's but there's like when the big project happened on 3rd Avenue, we replaced that pipe proactively because Darwin was spending $10 million on the surface, but the pipe hadn't failed yet. There are the vast majority of the pipes that's been already replaced was installed in the 50s, so it was just a matter of the material and the way they're manufactured.
Thank you.
Councilor Palladino?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your report, Doug. In one of your slides, the wastewater treatment capacity, you went specifically down to the digester capacity. And I don't know exactly how you put it, but you said we're getting close there.
Yes.
Like getting close to.
Well, yeah. So I gotta find the. Yeah, so it's the, here we are. So that was the measure that was used was the annual minimum. And so that was like the worst case scenario. That's where that blue arrow is. And so you can see that in 2019 it was we were the top blue line was approaching that yellow, and that was where I was saying operationally we were close. And we did experience digester upset in 2021, and that was because we did have a unit out of service. And so we had half as many tanks doing the job, so that means half of the time available for the bacteria. So you will see next month part of the plant expansion will include a third digester to address that. But it's just to help illustrate that, there's a number of different processes at the wastewater plant, and so each of them has a capacity, and each of them is in a different state of unused capacity.
Another one of these assets we keep talking about.
Absolutely. Well, that's actually the fault of the finance department. They insist on us calling them that.
I think it was a requirement from municipal affairs or something.
It is, and they also talk about it right across every municipality in Canada calls them assets.
Yeah, and it's intended to make us treat them responsibly and replace them at the end of life. Thanks.
Following up on Councillor Palladino, I think I'm going to already make my assumption that what keeps you up at night is capacity issues.
Well, yeah, yes and no. I think in recent years, the amount of unused capacity, the buffer space has been shrinking. We do have a plan on how to address that. It only takes hundreds of millions of dollars, and you'll see that next month. The things that what really keeps me up at night is the stuff that I can't control, and this we can make plans. We can we can collect rates to fund projects and do the right projects, but the one thing that at the risk of keeping you up at night too, is really drought conditions, and so I can't make water if the river's empty, and a multi-year drought is my biggest fear.
Well, I mean, this summer they're already talking hot, dry, so.
Yes.
Mr. will be happy, you won't be. It's kind of interesting that Mr. Sanchez arranged for your two groups to come in today, because to fix your stuff, you have to go through his stuff, right? So you.
Yeah, we're partners.
Yeah, you guys probably do work very closely together, because it is one of those things, because, anytime a road is closed, it's probably his fault, right? Yeah.
It's a handy place to keep your pipe.
Yeah. So when you guys are looking at capital projects, the relationship between the two departments is effective?
Yes, it is, and it's sometimes it's challenging the frequency of the maintenance that we do doesn't line up, but we do take efforts on every year when we're doing our capital planning. We make sure that transportation knows where we're going to dig up a road to replace a pipe, and if it coincides with their condition assessment, they can have the overlay happen that same season or the following season to restore the road condition. The inverse doesn't work as well. Darwin can provide me with a list of where they're going to pave, but we're not going to replace pipes because there's going to be a pavement, and so if you look at some of those 100-year-old pipes downtown, the surface of the road's been replaced, probably 6 or 8 times in the life of that pipe, and the pipe hasn't cried uncle yet. So.
Well, that's because they had to get those silly streetcar tracks out of the way.
That's true.
That was the difficulty there.
Yep.
I think a lot of the public would be surprised to know that almost a fifth of our water goes to regional sources, that we really do supply a very large regional area with water. Not to go into any details, but do you see any major expansion in the regional networks that we should be concerned about for our capacity?
Well, there's we just in the last 6 months met with all of the regional stakeholders one-on-one to talk about their future plans, to make sure that we're not caught by surprise or fail to accommodate their dreams in our capital plans. For the most part, the towns and hamlets experience pretty steady growth, and it's not unusual for their demand on our system to be pretty steady. Just in recent months, McCain's announced a doubling of their facility. That French fry plant gets water from Lethbridge, is part of our arrangement that was made over 20 years ago that also supplies Coaldale. And but the doubling of that facility was foreseen in the agreement. So we've 20 years ago we agreed to provide them with enough water for doubling of that plant, and so that's all in place. But that demand will show up on 1 week, some years from now, and we'll need the plant capacity to do that. So it's not so much, I guess the point is it's not so much population growth, which is, as Darwin illustrated in his presentation, pretty steady and predictable. But for water and wastewater is large industrial users, whether they're within the city or in the region, that can have really a sharp change to our system.
We can kind of oversee our own growth, but we don't have any say in what they grow out there. Mr. Sanchez, something to add?
Yes, Doug covered the engagement that we have been doing with the regional partners, but something else I want to bring into the conversation is we have been recently working with what is called the Agri-Food Corridor, different municipalities from Medhat to Lethbridge in terms of capacity. But there is a factor that is limiting to a point, and it's the water licenses, and Doug can probably expand more on that. I mean, those are something that are not being available right now. I mean, if you got one before, you have what you need. The city is in a good position. I mean, the city, either Mr. Kaup and even his predecessors, they have done a good job to secure enough water right licenses to treat water from the river. But that's a limiting factor also for regional customers, right? If they don't have one now, they will need to negotiate. And part of the work that we also have been mentioning to the Minister of Infrastructure, the current and the previous one, is the fact that current water licenses, I believe, Doug, the cities or municipalities, they only have 2% of all of those. All the irrigation districts, they own the majority of that. And that's an area that we're trying to work and see is there a chance that we can get more in order to secure that end? But that's only one point. A different point is capacity, and Doug mentioned that before. We are at that 90%, and we need to start planning for the future because we don't know what can happen.
The reason I bring up the region as well, I mean, we're supplying the region, but it's our infrastructure. Is there a way to get money from other people to help with the infrastructure? Has that been discussed, or is it something we want to own ourselves and not have as a regional asset?
Yeah, I guess it's the complicating factor is that the existing grant programs for water and wastewater have population limits, and so the city of Lethbridge doesn't qualify for those grants because of our population, and the smaller towns, the Colehursts and Coaldales and Picture Buttes, used those grants to buy the pipeline that goes out to from here to there, and so the province recognized that it's good value to have regional systems so that they're not every 20 years rebuilding Picture Butte's treatment plant, and for that they had a premium on their percentage for the pipeline. And so I'm sure that there are folks at the province that think that they've made their contribution to the cause. But it's definitely a challenge. We'll be looking at the rates going forward as to whether, given the capital investments, whether we need to have a different recovery model. But that'll get me through the summer. We'll talk to that in the fall.
Okay. Acting Mayor Parker?
Thank you very much. And I remember, Mr. Kelp, you told me a statistic or an interesting fact years ago. You said, we were saying about people buying bottled water, it's like $2 or $3. And you said for the same price, you could fill up 2,000 bottles of using our water for the same price. Am I correct on that?
Our
Yeah.
award-winning water.
Award-winning water.
That's correct. So assuming that it's a half-liter bottle that you're paying that $1 for, or for $1.24, you can get 1,000 liters, and which is only 2,000 of those half-liter bottles. And for a bonus, not only is it award-winning, but I'll deliver it to your house for free.
I actually remember that stat, and I tell that to people a lot. It just blows my mind that people pay $3 for a bottle of water. But anyway, that's my
They have great marketing
Yeah, they
bottles of
do.
water.
I remember standing in front of a store that had 3 drink machines, vending machines out on the sidewalk, and one was juice and one was soda and the other one was water, and the water cost more per bottle than the others, and I had to think, my gosh, it must cost a lot to get the water out of that Coca-Cola so you can put it in the bottle.
Thank you.
Touche. Well, thank you, Mr. Cope. I think that is the end of questions, and we'll move to the motion. I have a motion from Acting Mayor Parker. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends Council receive for information the Water, Wastewater, and Stormwater 2022 Annual Report. Now, Acting Mayor Parker, you did suggest, and I think it's a good idea, that we maybe pull this off consent. So maybe we add a little part there that we are recommending to agenda review that this go on to the regular agenda, so we can just explain how expensive water is in Calgary compared to Lethbridge.
Yeah, and actually, technically, you could have both reports, but I don't think there's anything contentious or anything controversial on the transportation one, so that could be considered consent. But I thought it'd be a good point to take that one out just to talk about the rates and how low the rates are in Lethbridge. I want to thank you for your presentation. All 3 groups did an amazing job in making their presentation today. But I do recall that water is something, such a cliche, we take it for granted, but and we also take for granted the stuff that we send down the stream as well, that it comes back clean and safe, which is something we do take for granted, and I greatly appreciate it. And sometimes no news is good news from your department, specifically in that regards. But I also understand, since being on council, and I think Mr. Calpry, remember this, when we did the deal with McCain's, that was the first major industry that we actually started selling water to, was McCain's. And of course, that opened up lots of other opportunities, Coaldale, Colehurst, but we're still somewhat protected of water because it is a limited resource. And so I'm glad that you folks in your department are doing your due diligence and making sure that when we do expand in those areas, that we have the capacity and proper infrastructure in place. So otherwise, if there's no other debate, I just want to thank for the presentation. I call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Passes unanimously. We were in a unanimous mood today. And we are adjourned. Go enjoy the 30-plus weather, everybody, and I'm off to Greenhaven. Greenhaven to buy plants.